Do we need to record for this final one?
We do.
Yes, we do.
Recording. Okay. And here we go.
And Katie, you've got it recorded for posterity and for Ian.
Yes.
Okay. I had the pleasure of spending the last 3 days with Dr. Swin. He's been to Washington, D.C., to Future Generations, to Eastern Mennonite University, and today he's at Harvard in Boston. And we talked about food, water, and energy all the way down from D.C. to West Virginia. And there's one word that I can throw out there that for Dr. Sun combines those three things. And the word is soil. Dirt. The quality of the dirt, the quality of the soil. And so as we look at our environmentalism, conservation, ecotourism, green movement, Sun would say more than food, what matters here is an agricultural system. More than water, it's understanding an ecosystem of the sources of water. And more than identifying who has access to what energy, the question is, what kind of energy, how affordable is it, how accessible is it, who's producing it, who's selling it, and at what cost? So if you take the life of a farmer, the farmer of rice or the farmer of any tree, or even the farmer who is focused on animal husbandry, poultry or pork or beef, that farmer really is thinking about an agricultural system, a water ecosystem, and his source of energy and the cost of that energy. And soil is the common denominator of all three things. So you were talking about food, Katie, and access to food and what's wrapped in plastic. That matters, and that matters in precisely this way. All three of those things speak to food wrapped or not wrapped in plastic, because that plastic is a petroleum product. If it's wrapped in plastic, it's probably traveled a great distance, and that's used up a lot of fuel. One of Sun's interesting comments, everybody can probably identify Katie's favorite restaurant in Gantap. What is Katie's favorite restaurant? You've probably all eaten there with her.
It's on Daytime Street.
Katie, what's your favorite restaurant?
Back cow.
What's your second favorite restaurant?
Oh gosh. All the vegetarian restaurants.
The one that gives you heaps and heaps of vegetables that you're...
Oh gosh. Oh, the one that I don't get noodles?
The leafy greens. The leafy greens.
Oh yeah.
Minh Thành or something, right?
Minhua. So Dr. Sun says all of those leafy greens that Katie just loves have no taste. Those leaves are fed by chemical through a water drip system of petroleum-based tubes with no soil. And because they have all the chemicals, the leafy green can grow and be beautiful. And boy, does it have a presentation at the table. But the leaves don't have the same taste compared to the same seed planted in soil. And it's the same with the rice farmer. Planting the seed in what kind of soil and at what time? And does the soil become fertilized before the seed is put in, or is the fertilizer, which is petroleum based, so it's energy, applied after? Is the soil tended before the field is flooded, or before? Before or after? Before or after? The timing is everything, The application is everything. The products, the origin of every product, all of it goes into the soil. Now, if you grow rice or if you grow a leafy green for Minhua restaurant in good soil, you will not only have taste, you will have nutrients, and you will have sustainability, and you will have lower, much, much lower costs. But if you shortcut the system in how you use the food, the water, the energy, you might have a quicker product, you might have a showier product, and you will have an expensive and less tasty, less nutritious product. So that's a summary of a 3-hour car ride with Dr. Sun on the subject of food, water, and energy. The soil matters, and that cost of the soil to the farmer matters. A farmer that is using the right timing and the right amount with food, water, and energy will be able to grow his rice for half to 1/3 the cost of rice grown in the fast way. And the farmer that is using the soil correctly will emit about 20% of the pollution that a farmer who is doing the shortcut will emit. So here's another question. Nobody got the correct answer to Katie's favorite restaurant, but who is by far the biggest polluter of greenhouse gases in Gantap province, who is by far the greatest emitter of greenhouse gases? Industry?
Farmers?
Sorry?
Is it farmers?
It's the farmers. The farmers, just by the timing of putting nitrogen in the rice paddy, if they're throwing the petroleum-based chemicals onto the water where they have already planted the seed or replanted the seedling, they are emitting 75% of their nitrogen straight into the air instead of it fixing in the soil and making the plant stronger. So the largest polluter of nitrous oxide, which is among the worst greenhouse gases, is the farmer. So here's the question, here's the third question. How do you encourage change? How do you encourage a farmer to do it differently? What the hell is water? At what point does a farming family get the idea? Katie?
I think that's a question for Anne. He would know best how companies are incentivizing farmers to do environmentally friendly practices. Is it more money? More training? What do you think, Anne?
Well, actually, I think it's belong to the macro scale. Like the farmers are the most vulnerable groups that suffer from the market. So actually, they just do whatever they want to, just for a living. So actually, most of them now today know that using chemicals and pesticides are really harmful for the environment. But actually, if they don't use them, then the crops will decrease in terms of the yield.
Mm-hmm.
So this is their last choice to use pesticides and chemical just for their living.
Yeah, and that comes back to somebody like us in the US who import rice from Vietnam. Are we thinking about what type of rice we're importing? Are we thinking about the farmers having the choice to put chemicals on their field or not? And maybe if there was a different demand, a demand for healthier rice in importing countries, the farmers would then feel that they could change, that they had the opportunity to change, because that's where the demand is.
Right. So, for Vietnam, it is the, actually we have bigger land compared to Thailand
Hmm.
for a rice field. But actually, we have more rice, more, better productivity.
Hmm.
But in terms of quality, we get lower quality because we use a lot of pesticides and chemicals. So,
Yeah.
And Nan, you're right. The farmer has made a decision to increase his yield and the number of crops that he produces a year, 3 instead of 2 or 1. But the cost of increasing the yield outweighs the profit that the farmer retains from his investment of time and money.
Yeah, but that's also psychology because
Yep.
that's
And
a
it's also
long-term decision.
politics.
Yeah, that's a long-term
So,
decision to switch rather than short-term high yield,
yep,
money in my hand now.
yep. So the farmer is thinking money in my hand now, and the government is thinking also psychologically. Vietnam is the number 2 exporter of rice in the world because of quantity. When people are looking at the number related to the amount of rice that Vietnam exports, they're not asking the quality question, they're asking the quantity question.
Hmm.
So the government is measured by quantity, not quality. The farmer is measured by quantity, not quality.
Yep.
And this all fits perfectly into the business model of international companies selling the ingredients. They're able to sell 3 times as much seed because most of the seed gets wasted.
Hmm.
They're able to sell more pesticide, more herbicide, more fertilizer because that increases the yield and allows 3 yields a year.
Yeah.
The person who is transporting it is in favor of greater yields because there's more to transport and there's more to charge for all the transport. So there are many forces that say quantity, 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 quantity. Who is saying quality? Less is better. Who is making that argument?
All right, I might move on for time's sake, Dan.
Sure. But anyway, this is, here's a question. So this 10th unit and this question about food, water, and energy fits all 10 themes, touches all 17 SDGs. Okay, let's go on. Just right there, pause. We've got to find real people in real time with solutions to challenges posed by the SDGs and the Beni Bamboo topic. So where is there a farmer? Or where is there somebody in the agricultural sector touching food, water, and energy who would allow us to interview him or her for the profile of this chapter? Okay.
So this is
Katie.
this is just a review again of the Nexus, and this comes from the document that I sent you. It's just showing the connections between everything. It takes water and energy and lots of it to make the food we eat. Energy is used to move water to our home and clean the water. Water is required to run power plants safely and to produce oil and gas. Some food crops are turned into fuel for vehicles. So this is just showing how these three interact, and when these three come into conflict, there's really big consequences because one is off balance, which creates a whole unbalanced relationship between the three. So an energy system is all about, could be about electricity, how to distribute fuels, power plants, rooftop solar panels, transmission lines, coal mines, oil refineries, anything you can think about. For this is macro as well. It can be micro. What kind of energy do you as an individual consume daily? Water system, this is huge in the Mekong Delta. Is it for drinking? In the Mekong Delta, most of your drinking water comes from groundwater because it's cleaner. The surface water is used for irrigation or industry, and the surface water is not clean. Wastewater treatment is a little complicated in Gunta from what I studied. There's some testing in the city, but not enough testing in the rural areas. So it's hard to say how your water treatment is happening and how healthy that is. And then think of the infrastructure it takes to transport water: pipes, faucets, water towers, treatment plants, watersheds, all of that.
And if the energy is interrupted, Katie, for just a minute,
Yeah.
it reverses the flow in the pipes.
Yeah.
So you have to have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, very, very predictable flow of energy. 99% predictability of energy is not enough for clean municipal water.
Mm-hmm.
You must have 100%. You must have a backup should there be a power outage. There has to be a way in which the municipal water plant continues to clean.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the municipal level. The farmer's clean water, he doesn't have a municipal water plant, but the farmer's clean water starts up in Tibet because the water has to come slowly in a natural way through the ecosystem for it to be filtered all the way. And if there is logging and if there is damming upstream, then the water is reaching the farmer in a polluted form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in the Mekong Delta, we all can really see how the food system works, from its growing, its transport, to its consumption. But I said in my paper, if you read it, that there's a trend in Vietnam to consume from the supermarket, so that we don't necessarily see as much in the supermarket of where our food is coming from. But at the market, if you see this top left picture, we could ask these ladies where they grew their food, and we could talk to them. But in the supermarket, we have to trust food safety. And supermarket's reputation is built on food safety and quality, but sometimes that's an illusion. We don't actually know. So that's complicated. And then if you think about somebody like Mui Kung, who is allowed to produce organically because people will buy his organic chocolate. He's made his brand based on producing his chocolate organically. But he can only operate at a small scale, and maybe it's not profitable enough for his children to want to take over the family business. So.
And maybe An has a word about the agricultural system too. He's not looking at the supermarket, but the restaurants that are part of the agricultural system.
You mean like in demand or something?
Well, if I understand your job correctly, you're looking at the whole supply chain of food that ends up in a restaurant and gets served to a customer, right?
Not really a home chain, but a phase in the home process. It depends. It depends on their request. But Katie, you hit a really important point that for all the goods and the products in the supermarket, that's a real illusion. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of the Zoom, so you talk about the origin of the product. So this is a really huge question. It's a really headache problem that even a lot of big associations in Europe, they really cared about this, and they, sometimes they come to Vietnam and do auditings and investigation, but actually there's no issues found but actually they know it was illegal, and it's not the true origin of the products exported to Europe. But actually when they come to find out, and they could not find out anything. So it's a really hard issue.
Are they sourcing from a big company in Vietnam? So like that company collects from all the farmers and then the company ships to Europe?
Well, if they do like that, and then no problem anyway. But usually they, some factory, they import and then they process and then re-export. But they declare the origin from Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So that's the point. But it's actually illegal for Europe market.
Oh.
Right.
Got
So
it.
there's a lot of cross-border trade, even of rice. So you might have Thai rice that crosses the border and gets repackaged in a Vietnamese bag,
Right.
and then sold through a middleman to a European partner. But its origin is a Thai rice paddy, not a Vietnamese rice paddy.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the chain of control of how it was done, and what's the reliability of that product? And one person's reliability affects the next person's reliability. So if Vietnam has a reputation of being reliable in its product, that's a positive effect on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have even a small number being unreliable, it affects everybody's reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now the points turn to U.S. market because of the trade war between China and U.S. So all the goods may come to Vietnam, then we export it to U.S. So that's going to be more complicated in U.S. market.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And this is always my favorite topic, waste. Think about how much energy it takes to produce plastic, how much plastic your food is packaged in, and then how much plastic goes back into the water. So waste is a huge part of the food-water-energy nexus.
Katie, what if all the plastic bags had a warning, just like cigarette cartons, that use of this bag is hazardous to your health?
Yeah. Yeah.
They all say thank you, but they
Exactly.
should say hazardous to your health.
Exactly. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, so 2.5 billion metric tons. Crazy. Okay, that was the soil. Where do our greenhouse gas emissions come from? This is from the US, but we have emissions from heat and electricity, agriculture and land, as Dan was saying. This is a big emitter. Industry, transportation, other energy. Food waste produces greenhouse gases. So in the US, we have a huge problem with food waste. Our supermarkets are so full of stuff, there's no way anybody could buy that much. And then that food waste just goes into a landfill, and then it produces methane. And then we have energy emissions from building. So think about how food, water, and energy are connected to this.
Katie, are these global figures or were those US figures?
US figures.
Okay, so it would be a very different diagram for Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay, and then, so when we think about a green movement, who do we consider if we're talking about the food, water, energy nexus? Social workers, water, families, farmers, scientists, students, all of these good people, all sectors, all stakeholders. So when we talk about a green movement, it's not just for the environmentalist and the scientist, it's for everybody. Everybody has a stake in this. These are just some facts about Vietnam. I'll run through them quickly. Generally, Vietnam has sufficient water resources, but these sources are complicated by natural and human factors. So we have lots of rivers and lots of dams. Our renewable fresh water in Vietnam is decreasing, and the population is growing, so that's a problem. We know that in places like Cà Mau, the groundwater levels are going down, so we don't have enough fresh water to supply our coastal cities in the Mekong Delta. Demand for water mainly comes from agriculture, industry a little bit, and cities a little bit. Again, cities take groundwater, that's the water underneath the ground, and agriculture and industry take surface water, so our rivers and our canals. And yeah, in the river basins, like in the Red River and Mekong River, water use is expected to increase significantly. And then we have drought as well. So water is very complicated in Vietnam. Energy in Vietnam, you have a lot of natural resources for energy. You use a lot of coal and you export coal, but we've actually turned to importing coal because in the north, you can't access the coal that you need with a certain technology. And renewable energy is underdeveloped. Demand for energy is growing, as we know. Population grows. People want more power.
So we talked about that on the car ride too. Can we go back one slide?
Mhm.
People understand, and the government understands, the need for solar energy. But solar energy requires land to put up panels. If you want a large solar farm, you need a lot of land, but all the land is used. So the only two options are to take land out of the hands of agricultural production to use it for solar panels, or to just put solar panels on existing structures, schoolhouses, farmers' houses, whatever. And there's been a lot of corruption in this.
Mhm.
So people get an agreement for a large solar farm and thereby acquire a lot of land.
Mhm.
And then what happens is after a couple of years, they say, you know, this hasn't turned out profitably. They take down the solar panels and the land has been rezoned, no longer for agricultural use, and it gets sold for commercial and house building purposes. So it's become the subject of a fair amount of corruption. The only good alternative is the smaller scale use of solar, putting it on people's houses or putting it on school buildings. But that's a small use of solar, not a larger investment of solar.
Mhm. Okay. And then I focus, you can kind of notice, and this is our pre-form assignment, and in general on food. I think it's just a great way, because we all interact with food daily, to envision how the food-water-energy nexus is connected. So as we all know, agriculture is very important in Vietnam. It provides 25% of export value, so money, for Vietnam, and it employs 70% of rural households, and that is primarily women and poor rural households. Land use for agriculture is increasing. Rice uses the most land, and then sugarcane uses a fairly small amount of land, because you can pack it densely and it grows in a dense space. And then 50% of rice production and 70% of aquaculture happens in the Mekong Delta, and the Mekong Delta produces 1/3 of Vietnam's GDP. So the Mekong Delta gives Vietnam a lot of money and a lot of rice and fish. As Anne knows, Vietnam has many trade deals with the world, and so that impacts what the farmers will grow and how they will grow their food. So will they produce a lot of rice so that they can export a lot and get a lot of money back? And also, there's more foreign food coming into Vietnam. If you walk into a supermarket, you can see this. And so that changes local demand. You might, I noticed there's a lot of Korean food in Vietnamese supermarkets. So think about the transport it takes to get Korean food to Vietnam. And then same if we want to have milk from New Zealand. And then when we access food in supermarkets, we reshape local economies. So the women in the traditional market have to figure out how they will compete with the supermarket. Do they give up their job in the local market? Do they find another source of income? What happens to those women in the local market? And then this is just a big graphic of how this all connects. I'll put this up on the Google Drive so you can look at it later. And then what the hell is water? So sorry to run through that. Let me stop share. Okay. Now.
But Katie, before we jump into the groups, and I know that's important, let's take just a minute to ask, what is the purpose of studying this? So what the hell is water? Introducing this in Bending Bamboo to students of grades 10, 11, and 12. What is the objective?
Mm-hmm.
What do we hope they will learn? What will the teachers learn? What will the students learn? What will their families learn? That matters.
And if I might share one more graphic. I think that, and Anne mentioned this was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
So this shows the process of how food gets to your plate. When you're thinking about your breakout room narrative, who in this graphic could you interview to illuminate the food, water, energy connections?
Uh-huh. Yeah, if we could take a graphic like that and do a Vietnamese version of it. I mean, these all look like Cabbage Patch dolls, which is a little disturbing. But those are the questions, and that's all interrelated.
Yeah.
What else? What other questions fit into that graphic? And should we make our own "What's on my gun top plate" graphic?
Any questions, guys, about the food, water, energy, or this graphic?
I have to say, the question that Katie just posed is what I asked Dr. Sun as we left Washington, D.C. and drove for 3 hours. And it animated his response for most of that drive. So clearly it's a good question. And it really does pertain to the health and the future of the Mekong Delta.
Mm-hmm.
Get a good answer to the question and a good application of that answer. So not just head knowledge, but in the soul and with the hands, doing something with that knowledge matters a lot.
So I'm gonna I didn't have time to make the breakout rooms while I was scrolling through. Let me make those really quickly.
But I say, like, I really miss the time when people using the seasonal food, because the farmers, or I don't know, whoever, like, really changed our habit of living. Like, remember, like, we waiting for that long for the third holiday to eat watermelon, but today we can eat watermelon every day, and it took us like fed up with that.
Can I interrupt? This is Dr. Sun's pet peeve, how awful the watermelon has become. The watermelon is available 12 months a year, and it has no taste, no texture. It's not sweet anymore. And if it is sweet, somebody stuck sugar in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you could actually, your point exactly. If you wait for the watermelon that the farmers know is seasonal, it's a good watermelon. But if it's a manufactured watermelon that you can have any time of the year, it's not worth buying and eating.
Yeah.
I interrupted. I'm sorry, but that is Dr. Sun's pet peeve, watermelon.
Also, with China, with this, so we call it the seasonless supermarket. But I also notice in like the big traditional markets, for example, the one across from Mega Mart, they have a lot of fruit, and sometimes if you don't know the seasons of fruit, you might buy a dragon fruit from China or something, and there's a lot of thought about what does China do to their dragon fruit. We don't really know. So as the supermarket or the market becomes seasonless and children grow up thinking that fruit is just always there, they don't necessarily think about what does it take to grow that fruit, when does it grow naturally, if it's not the natural season, is that fruit full of growth hormones? So yeah, you're losing that local knowledge, that traditional knowledge of when fruit is supposed to be in the market, which is what I've lost. I don't have that knowledge. You know, I think I can get an orange whenever I want in the market.
I interrupted. Did you finish your thought? I'm sorry.
Yeah, too.
I'm still thinking of not only the food industry, but most of the aspect of life become like conveniences. And I don't feel like that is a good trend if we keep on with this. So if our kids know exactly the vital role of the Mekong Delta, to the whole, like if the Mekong Delta collapse in the food industry or any kind of aspect of life that contribute to the GDP of the country, maybe they can love their land more, because what they most of the thing is like so weird to me for today. Like most of the thing are conveniences. You just like stop by and you cannot wait for 5 minutes to get it and go. You have to have it in 1 minute. So the conveniences is not in the food itself, but in the way it is served and in the way people trying to compete with each other to get the customers. So the dropping by will decide the income for the day. But at the same time, with all of the seasonal food, you cannot change, for example, like papaya, because I know that Katie know about that. No matter, this is a fact, like very seasonal food, because when you have a lot of water, papaya cannot that sweet. No matter you trying to do something, but the papaya tree will die. So even with that, people trying so hard to make it sweet in the other way. So I mean, conveniences in that way. Another, I don't know, like why people like think a little bit like overwhelming in the look. For example, like huge, but sometimes the condense of the quality of the fruit or vegetable is very important. If you recall the part of the grandma, how can I say that? Like there always a little corner close to the water body. The grandma usually put down the tree rest, like something you cannot eat, and put it there, and then it grows just wildly over there, and you can like collect it for certain dishes you like. People stop teaching that kind of habit to kids. Just like open the garbage bin and just like throw it into it. So I think it need a lot of things with the family. If they still like keep on that way, they will know like how it grow and how it grow organically. So that's why I always love the way people educate each other in the family level, because this is every day, this is every hour education instead of having like huge lesson in the school. So the collaboration is very important, because one generation change the habit, the next generation will produce more bad habits. That is a problem.
Or the next generation has a different kind of education that allows it to critique what the last generation did. It's not necessarily a straight line, but it can be circular, or it can be more of a wave. And
but if it is the case, I'm wondering like my generation maybe they have been doing something really wrong, because we retake the older generation, but then we catch up new bad habits. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard to go back, because if we don't learn that kind of habit from older generation, how come we transfer that to the next generation? So one generation has that responsibility to transfer.
This is the argument for not just bilingualism with purpose, but bilingual families living with purpose. Make it an intergenerational learning process with English and Vietnamese. I think we imagine too much of this being on the shoulders of the language teacher. The shoulders that this should rest on are the families and society. And the school, be it a private institute or a university institute or the public school system, are a part of the bilingual family with purpose.
Yes, and on that note, I'm going to ask you all to think about who in your community can tell this story to your students, okay? So think about that graphic. When I was saying facts, think about who who popped into your mind when I was giving you facts or when Dan was describing soil, okay? So I have 3 breakout groups. You have the narrative assignment in your email, and I gave Tu, Li, and Yin ability to record, okay? Ready? You have, we'll say, I'm gonna make this quick, I'm sorry, 25 minutes in breakout groups, so work efficiently. This is a test of your forum strength.
Can you pair me with someone else? I don't feel like that better after 7 days of medication. I need to do that. So
Yeah.
can you put someone else who can record that for me?
Yeah. One second.
We still have Mao and
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Mao is also sick. And I'm gonna give you ability to record, okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, and breakout rooms ready, set, go.